Social Mastery: The Secret Habits of Highly Influential People, published by Imperium Audiobooks. Influence. It is the hidden currency that shapes every room you walk into, every conversation you have, and every opportunity that comes your way. The most successful people in the world, leaders, entrepreneurs, visionaries, understand that their true power is not just in what they know or what they do, but in how they connect with others. Think for a moment about the people who command attention the instant they enter a room. They don't need to shout, they don't need to boast, and they don't rely on luck. They have mastered a set of habits that make their presence magnetic, their words impactful, and their actions unforgettable. This is social mastery, the ability to influence, inspire, and build lasting connections that open doors to opportunities most people never see. This audiobook is your guide to uncovering those secret habits. You'll learn how influential people think, communicate, and behave differently. You'll discover why charisma is not something you're born with, but something you can build step by step. From mastering body language to developing emotional intelligence, from becoming a persuasive communicator to learning how to lead without force, the chapters ahead will give you the exact tools you need to stand out in a noisy world. But this is not just about gaining influence, it's about using influence with purpose. Social mastery is not manipulation, it is alignment. It's the art of connecting authentically, listening deeply, and creating value in every interaction. When you master these skills, you not only build stronger relationships but also unlock opportunities for wealth, leadership, and personal growth. By the end of this audiobook, you will have a practical blueprint to transform how others perceive you, how they respond to you, and how you can lead with quiet strength and undeniable influence. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Power of Presence. Influence begins long before you open your mouth. Long before you share your ideas, pitch your vision, or even shake someone's hand, people are already making judgments about you. In fact, research shows that within the first 7 seconds of meeting you, others form lasting impressions that determine how much they will trust, respect, or follow you. And here's the truth. Most people never take control of that first impression. Highly influential people, however, know that presence is their secret weapon. Presence is not about being the loudest in the room or demanding attention with force. It's about cultivating an energy, a confidence, and an aura that naturally draws people in. Think about the leaders you admire most. Often it's not their words that strike you first. It's how they carry themselves, how they command the room without effort, and how you feel when you're around them. That is presence. So, how do you build it? The first step is awareness. Influential individuals are acutely aware of their body language, posture, tone of voice, and even the silence between their words. They understand that communication is only 7% verbal and 93% non-verbal. This means that your gestures, eye contact, and stance are often speaking louder than anything you say. When you slouch, avoid eye contact, or appear distracted, you send signals of uncertainty and weakness. But when you stand tall, maintain calm but confident eye contact, and move with intention, you silently project strength and credibility. Consider this: 2 people walk into a room. One enters hurriedly, shoulders slumped, eyes darting nervously, clutching their phone. The other walks in upright, unhurried, with a calm smile, hands relaxed at their sides, scanning the room with a composed confidence. Without either saying a word, you already know who seems more trustworthy, more capable, and more influential. That's the power of presence in action. But presence is not only external, it is internal first. You cannot fake confidence for long. True presence comes from belief in yourself, from an inner calmness that others can feel. Influential people have trained their minds to silence inner doubts before they step into important situations. They use rituals, breathing exercises, visualization, positive affirmations, to center themselves so that their energy is controlled, not chaotic. Before a major speech, presentation or negotiation, they don't just prepare their words, they prepare their state of being. This is where discipline comes in. To cultivate presence, you must practice daily habits that reinforce confidence. For example, posture practice. Spend a few minutes each day, standing tall, shoulders back, chin slightly raised, as if you are already the person others look up to. This not only changes how others see you but also how you see yourself. Eye contact drills. In every conversation, practice holding eye contact just 1 second longer than feels natural. It signals confidence, sincerity, and interest. Intentional silence. Influential people are not afraid of pauses. Instead of rushing to fill silence, let it work for you. A thoughtful pause before speaking can add weight to your words. Breathing control. Before entering any high-stakes environment, take 3 deep, controlled breaths. This signals calmness to your body and keeps nerves from hijacking your presence. Now, let's talk about the magnetic quality of presence. When you meet someone with true presence, you feel it immediately. They make you feel seen, valued, and understood. This is the paradox. Presence is less about you and more about others. Influential people know how to focus completely on the person in front of them. They don't check their phones mid-conversation. They don't glance around the room as if searching for someone better to talk to. They lock in, listen deeply, and give the gift of undivided attention. And because attention is so rare in today's distracted world, it feels incredibly powerful. Want to build influence fast? Practice listening like it's an art form. Nod with intention, reflect back what you've heard, and ask questions that show you care. When someone walks away from a conversation feeling heard, they walk away feeling that you are influential, even if you barely spoke about yourself. Presence also involves controlling the energy you bring into a room. People mirror the emotions of those around them, a psychological phenomenon known as emotional contagion. If you are anxious, tense, or negative, others will feel it and unconsciously adopt that energy. But if you remain calm, positive, and confident, you elevate the atmosphere, and people are drawn to you. Influential leaders know that they set the emotional tone. They choose to bring energy that empowers others, not drains them. Here's a story to illustrate this. A CEO once shared how he won the trust of his team during a crisis. The company was facing massive losses, and fear was spreading. Instead of panicking or pretending everything was fine, he walked into the room with calm steadiness. He acknowledged the challenges, spoke with clarity, and maintained composed body language. "I don't have all the answers yet," he told them, "but I know we'll find them together." That calm confidence radiated through the team, and instead of collapsing under pressure, they rallied. His presence carried them through uncertainty. Presence, then, is not about perfection. It is about control. Control of your emotions, your body, and the signals you send to others. It is a skill that can be built over time, with intention and practice. And once you master it, doors begin to open. People listen more closely, respect flows more naturally, and your ability to influence multiplies. So ask yourself, what do people feel when you walk into a room? Do they feel tension, distraction, or insecurity? Or do they feel calm, confidence, and strength? The answer to that question determines how much influence you truly have. As we move forward, remember this: presence is the foundation upon which all other habits of influence are built. Without it, your words lose power. With it, even silence can speak volumes. Chapter 2. The magnetic power of listening. Most people think influence comes from speaking well, delivering powerful words, persuading with charisma, and commanding attention with eloquence. But ask anyone who has experienced the presence of truly influential people, and they will often tell you this: it wasn't what they said that mattered, it was how they listened. Listening is one of the most underestimated habits in human interaction. In a world where everyone wants to be heard, Those who give the gift of deep intentional listening stand out as rare and unforgettable. They create space where others feel important, valued, and understood. And that, more than clever words, is what builds influence. Think about this for a moment. How often do you feel truly listened to? How often does someone stop, silence distractions, and give you their full attention without interrupting, without waiting impatiently for their turn to speak, without glancing at their phone or drifting away mid-conversation? It is so rare that when it happens, it feels extraordinary. You remember that person. You want to be around them again. That is the magnetic power of listening. Influential people understand this. They know that influence isn't just about broadcasting, it's about receiving. They have trained themselves to make others feel like the center of gravity in the conversation. And ironically, by focusing less on themselves and more on the person in front of them, they create deeper trust and loyalty than any speech could ever achieve. So, how do influential people listen differently? First, they listen with their eyes as well as their ears. They lean slightly forward, maintain steady but warm eye contact, and show small gestures of engagement, like nodding at the right moment or mirroring expressions subtly. This tells the other person, "I am here, with you fully present." Second, they listen without judgment. Average people often filter conversations through their own biases, preparing counter-arguments or silently criticizing what's being said. Influential people suspend judgment long enough to fully absorb what the other person is expressing. They create a safe space for openness, which encourages others to share more honestly. Third, they reflect and validate. Instead of letting words disappear into silence, they respond by acknowledging what they've heard. For example, if someone says, "I'm frustrated because my efforts aren't being noticed," an influential listener might respond, "It sounds like you've been putting in a lot of effort, and it feels discouraging that it isn't being recognized." That simple reflection makes the speaker feel understood at a deep level. But listening goes even deeper. It becomes an art when you learn to hear not only the words spoken, but also the emotions underneath them. Influential people listen for tone, pacing, and pauses. They pick up on what is not being said, the hesitation before a confession, the forced laugh hiding insecurity, the silence that speaks louder than words. And when they respond to those unspoken signals with empathy, they forge unbreakable connections. Let's look at an example. Imagine two managers talking to an employee who's struggling with performance. Manager A says, "Your numbers are low this month. You need to improve." Manager A listens first, notices the strain in the employee's voice, and gently asks, "I can tell something's weighing on you. What's been happening outside of work?" That question opens a floodgate. The employee reveals they've been caring for a sick parent, and suddenly the conversation shifts from criticism to support. Manager A not only gains loyalty, but also becomes a trusted leader, simply by listening deeply. Listening also builds persuasion. When people feel heard, they become more open to influence. If you want to change someone's mind, the fastest way is not to argue harder, but to listen better. Why? Because people resist what feels like an attack, but embrace what feels like understanding. When someone feels you truly grasp their perspective, they are far more willing to consider yours. Now, let's get practical. Here are habits you can practice daily to develop magnetic listening. The pause rule. Before responding, wait 2 seconds after the other person finishes speaking. This prevents you from interrupting, gives you time to process, and signals genuine thoughtfulness. Mirror back keywords. If someone says, "I feel stuck," reply with "stuck how?" Repeating their words encourages them to go deeper. Ask open-ended questions. Instead of yes or no, use what and how questions. What makes you feel that way? How do you see this working? These invite exploration. Eliminate distractions. Put your phone away. Face the person fully. Treat the conversation like it is the only thing that matters in that moment. Listen for emotions, not just facts. Notice tone, pace, and body language. Ask yourself, what's the feeling behind these words? One of the greatest examples of listening as influence is found in legendary leaders, like Nelson Mandela. He was known to be quiet in meetings, often letting others speak first. People thought he was simply reserved, but in reality, he was gathering insights, studying emotions, and making others feel valued. When he finally spoke, his words carried immense weight, because he had first listened. Listening, then, is not passive. It is active, intentional, and powerful. It transforms conversations into connections and relationships into alliances. It allows you to influence without pushing, to persuade without pressure, and to lead without force. As you begin practicing this habit, you'll notice subtle but profound changes. People will open up more around you. They'll trust you with details they don't share with others. They'll seek your opinion, not because you demand it, but because you've earned it. And slowly, your influence will expand, not because you shouted louder, but because you listened deeper. So remember this: the world is full of voices trying to be heard, but those who master the art of listening rise above the noise. They become magnetic, respected, and trusted. They become influential, not because they dominate conversations, but because they create space for others to feel significant. And significance is the soil in which influence grows. Chapter 3. The charisma of authenticity. When people think of charisma, they often picture the life of the party, the loud, dazzling figure who dominates the room with confidence and charm. But real charisma, the kind that turns ordinary individuals into magnets of influence, is not about putting on a show. It's about being authentic. Authenticity is the alignment between what you think, what you feel, and what you do. It is the courage to show up as yourself, without masks, without pretense, without the exhausting need to impress. People might admire perfection, but they connect with realness. And in the world of influence, connection always outweighs performance. Think of the most magnetic people you've encountered. Chances are, they didn't strike you as flawless. They may have laughed at themselves, admitted mistakes, or shared personal stories that revealed their humanity. That's authenticity at work. It disarms defensiveness, lowers barriers, and allows trust to flourish. Why does authenticity matter so much in social mastery? Because influence depends on trust, and trust cannot survive without truth. When people sense that you're pretending, exaggerating, or hiding, they instinctively pull back. But when they sense your words and actions come from a genuine place, they lean in. They may not even agree with you, but they will respect you, and respect is the foundation of influence. Let's be clear, authenticity doesn't mean oversharing every detail of your life or refusing to adapt to social contexts. It means consistency. It means showing up the same way in private as you do in public. It means not twisting yourself into someone else's image just to gain approval. This is where so many people go wrong. They think influence comes from projecting what others want to see. They wear masks, becoming one person at work, another with friends, and yet another online. The problem is, masks are fragile. They crack under pressure, they drain your energy, and eventually people see through them. Authenticity, on the other hand, requires no performance. It frees you to focus less on managing impressions and more on building real connections. Consider the rise of authentic leaders in business and politics. The ones who resonate most deeply are rarely those who appear perfect. Instead, they're those who admit flaws, own their struggles, and speak in ways that feel unscripted. Their power lies not in polished speeches, but in raw honesty. When Howard Schultz, The former CEO of Starbucks spoke about growing up poor in a Brooklyn housing project. Employees felt his vision for opportunity was real, not a marketing slogan. That authenticity created loyalty. But here's the deeper truth. Authenticity is not just about being yourself. It's about being your best self. It's about choosing integrity over convenience, values over popularity, and honesty over image. It is not an excuse to be careless with your words or actions. Saying that's just who I am is not authenticity, it's stubbornness. Authenticity means living in alignment with your higher self, not your impulses. So how do you build authentic charisma in your daily life? Let's break it down into habits. 1. Speak from your core values. Know what you stand for, and let that guide your decisions. When people see you acting from principles instead of popularity, they'll trust your consistency. Even if they disagree with you, they'll know where you stand. 2. Drop the performance. Stop trying to sound smarter, richer, or more interesting than you are. If you don't know something, admit it. If you made a mistake, own it. People respect honesty far more than false perfection. 3. Tell real stories. When sharing experiences, don't sanitize them into fairy tales. Share the struggles as well as the successes. Vulnerability creates connection. It shows that you've walked through challenges and emerged stronger. 4. Align your body language with your words. One reason inauthenticity is so easy to spot is that the body betrays the lie. Nervous fidgeting, lack of eye contact, or forced smiles can reveal incongruence. When your words and body language are aligned, authenticity radiates effortlessly. 5. Resist the urge to compare. Comparison breeds pretense. The moment you measure yourself against others, you start editing yourself to match them. Authentic people focus on growth, not competition. 6. Be consistent across contexts. Don't act one way with your colleagues and another with your friends. The most magnetic people are the same everywhere they go. That consistency builds reliability, which translates to trust. One of the best demonstrations of authentic charisma is found in Oprah Winfrey. Her rise to global influence was not built on perfection, but on openness. She shared her vulnerabilities, her traumas, and her doubts, things many public figures hide. Instead of making her look weak, it made her relatable. Millions saw their own struggles reflected in her honesty, and in turn they trusted her voice. This principle applies even in everyday interactions. Imagine two co-workers. One constantly tries to impress by using big words, exaggerating achievements, and pretending to know everything. The other openly admits when they don't know something, asks questions, and laughs at their mistakes. Which one do you feel safer with? Which one would you trust more in a crisis? That's the power of authenticity. It wins loyalty where arrogance cannot. But authenticity also requires courage. Society often rewards conformity. It's easier to blend in, say what people want to hear, and avoid rocking the boat. Authentic people stand out precisely because they dare to be genuine in environments that reward masks. That courage is magnetic. The key challenge, then, is learning to silence the inner critic that says, if I show the real me, I won't be enough. That fear drives pretense. But here's the paradox. People don't fall in love with perfection. They fall in love with humanity. They're drawn to the unpolished laughter, the sincere admissions, and the honest effort. When you dare to show yourself, you give others permission to do the same, and that's how influence multiplies. Authenticity also protects you from burnout. Pretending is exhausting. Maintaining multiple masks drains mental energy. Authentic people, on the other hand, conserve energy because they live in alignment. They don't waste time keeping up appearances. They invest time in growth and connection. So here is the law. If you want to be influential, stop chasing popularity and start living truthfully. Influence built on image will eventually collapse. Influence built on authenticity will endure. When people walk away from you, let them say not, they were impressive, but they were real, because in the end, we may admire the impressive, but we follow the authentic. Chapter 4. The Power of Listening. When most people think about influence, they picture speaking, delivering powerful speeches, persuading others with words, commanding attention through eloquence. Yet, the greatest influencers throughout history were not just great speakers, they were profound listeners. Listening is not passive. It is one of the most active, intentional, and transformative social skills you can develop. Real listening is the secret doorway into another person's mind, emotions, and worldview. It allows you to see beneath the surface, to understand what people truly need, and to respond in a way that resonates deeply. Why is listening so powerful? Because human beings crave to be heard. Every person carries invisible weight, dreams, worries, doubts, unspoken desires, and very few ever find someone who listens without judgment, without distraction, without rushing them to the finish. When you become that rare person who genuinely listens, people feel valued, respected, and seen. That feeling alone creates trust, and trust is influence. Think about the last time someone really listened to you, not just nodding politely, but leaning in, asking thoughtful questions, remembering details, and making you feel like your words mattered. Didn't that interaction leave a deep impression? Didn't you walk away more connected to that person? Now flip the perspective. When you give that same gift of attention, you become magnetic. But here's the truth. Most people don't listen. They wait to talk. They rehearse their reply while you're speaking. They interrupt. They glance at their phone. They nod absent-mindedly while their mind is elsewhere. That is not listening. That is waiting. And it kills influence. Influential people master the art of listening. They understand that silence often says more than words. They know that asking the right question at the right time can unlock trust faster than 100 speeches. They know that by holding space for others, they gain insight into fears, desires, and motivations, the raw material of influence. Let's break down how to listen like a master. 1. Listen with your full presence. When someone speaks, give them the gift of undivided attention. Put away the phone. Maintain eye contact, not in a forced way, but as a signal of interest. Lean slightly forward. Your body communicates, I'm here with you. You matter. This physical presence is half the battle. 2. Listen beyond words. People communicate more in tone, pauses, and body language than in sentences. A trembling voice might reveal fear. A long silence might reveal hesitation. A forced smile might mask discomfort. Influential listeners pick up on these subtle signals and respond with sensitivity. 3. Ask questions that invite depth. Instead of simple yes or no questions, ask open ones. What does that mean for you? Or how did that make you feel? Such questions show genuine curiosity and encourage the other person to share more. This deepens connection. 4. Resist the urge to interrupt. The moment you cut someone off, you send a signal. What I have to say is more important than what you're saying. Influential people resist that urge. They allow pauses. They give the other person space to finish, even if it takes time. 5. Reflect and validate. When someone shares, reflect back what you heard. It sounds like you're frustrated with your team because they don't respect your efforts. This shows that you not only heard the words but also grasped the meaning. Validation makes people feel understood. 6. Listen without judgment. People open up only when they feel safe. If you listen with criticism, sarcasm, or quick advice, you shut the door. Instead, create an atmosphere of acceptance. You don't have to agree. You just have to hear. Now let's ground this in real examples. Abraham Lincoln was not known for dominating conversations with speeches in private. He was known for listening. He would sit in silence while his advisors debated, absorbing every perspective before making decisions. His listening gave him an extraordinary ability to understand opposing views and unite a divided nation. In business, the most successful entrepreneurs are not necessarily the ones with the flashiest pitches. They are the ones who listen to customers. Steve Jobs, despite his reputation for strong opinions, listened obsessively to user frustrations. He noticed details others ignored, then built products that seemed to anticipate desires before people voiced them. That is influence born from listening. Even in daily life, listening transforms relationships. A spouse who listens instead of dismissing. A manager who listens instead of commanding. A friend who listens instead of competing for attention. Each act of listening strengthens bonds and elevates influence. Here's another layer. Listening also gives you power. Not manipulative power, but informational power. People reveal their priorities, values, and weaknesses when they feel heard. If you pay attention, you learn what truly drives them. This allows you to craft responses, strategies, and solutions that resonate precisely. While others waste time speaking, you gain the map of someone's heart. But listening is not easy. It requires patience in a world that rewards speed. It requires humility. In a world obsessed with self-promotion, it requires presence in a world addicted to distraction. This is why so few master it, and why those who do become unforgettable. To practice, try this challenge in your next conversation. Say less than the other person. Ask more questions than you answer. Reflect their words instead of inserting yours. You'll notice the other person leaving the conversation with a strange glow, thinking, "That was such a great talk," even though you barely spoke. Why? Because they felt heard. That's the paradox of influence. The less you focus on being interesting, the more you become irresistible. Listening is not weakness, it is leadership. It builds loyalty, disarms defensiveness, and opens doors that words alone cannot. And the greatest influencers know that every time they listen deeply, they deposit trust into the relationship. Over time, that trust compounds into unshakable influence. So here is the secret. If you want to master social influence, don't just learn to talk like a leader, learn to listen like one. For the voice that is heard the most is not always the one that speaks the loudest, but the one that listens the deepest. Chapter 5. The Magnetic Power of Storytelling. If listening is the foundation of influence, then storytelling is the bridge that carries your influence into people's hearts. Throughout human history, facts and figures have been forgotten, but stories have endured. Long before written language, tribes preserved knowledge through tales around the fire. Religions, cultures, and nations were built on shared narratives. Why? Because stories are the language of human emotion. A fact informs the mind. A story touches the soul. And when you can do both at once, deliver truth through narrative, you become magnetic. Influential people understand this. They don't just communicate, they enchant. They don't just persuade, they transport. Think of the greatest leaders and influencers of all time. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't present statistics alone. He painted a dream. Steve Jobs didn't describe technology. He told a story about rebels, about misfits, about people crazy enough to think they could change the world. Nelson Mandela didn't only speak of justice. He told a story of a nation wounded but capable of healing. These individuals changed history because they mastered the art of storytelling. Why does storytelling work so powerfully? Neuroscience gives us an answer. When you hear a story, your brain doesn't just process language, it simulates the experience. If I tell you about biting into a crisp apple, your sensory cortex lights up as though you were tasting it. If I describe running through a storm, your motor cortex activates. Stories bypass logic and go straight to the nervous system. They make people feel before they think, and once they feel, They are more open to being influenced. This is why influential people don't lecture. They narrate. They frame ideas inside stories. They weave lessons into anecdotes. And they use stories to connect, to inspire, and to persuade. Let's break down how to use storytelling as a tool of social mastery. 1. Anchor your message in a relatable human experience. If you want people to understand perseverance, don't just say never give up. Tell them about a time you failed, fell down, and got back up. Tell them about Thomas Edison creating 1,000 prototypes before the light bulb worked, or Oprah Winfrey being told she wasn't fit for television, only to become the most influential woman in media. Real, relatable stories bring abstract principles to life. 2. Structure your story for impact. Every compelling story follows a natural rhythm: conflict, struggle, resolution. Without conflict, there is no tension. Without struggle, there is no growth. Without resolution, there is no payoff. Think of your favorite movies. They all follow this arc. Use the same structure when sharing lessons, even in casual conversation. Paint the problem, describe the struggle, then reveal the breakthrough. That arc imprints on the mind. 3. Use vulnerability to build trust. Influential people know that perfection is not relatable. Struggle is when you share your failures, doubts, or moments of weakness. People connect. Vulnerability humanizes you, and people follow those they feel are human, not flawless. When Howard Schultz told the story of growing up poor before building Starbucks, he wasn't just selling coffee, he was selling a dream of possibility. 4. Make the listener the hero. The best storytellers don't center themselves, they center their audience. They frame the listener as the hero of the journey, they become the guide. This is the secret of persuasive communication. You are not the star, you are the mentor helping them discover their power. That's why Yoda was more influential than Luke Skywalker. 5. Engage all the senses. Stories that linger in memory are rich with detail. Instead of saying, "I was nervous before my speech," say, "My palms were damp, my throat dry, my heart thumping like a drum." These sensory details transport the listener into the experience, making them feel as though they lived it themselves. 6. Align your story with a universal theme. All human stories echo a few universal themes: the pursuit of freedom, the fight against injustice, the longing for love, the triumph of resilience. When your story taps into these timeless threads, it resonates across culture, age, and background. That's why the hero's journey is found in myths from every corner of the world. Now let's look at how this works in practice. In business, entrepreneurs who master storytelling raise more money, attract more customers, and build stronger brands. Investors don't just buy into a company, they buy into a founder's story. Customers don't just buy products, they buy the story behind them. Nike sells shoes, yes, but what they really sell is the story of pushing past limits. Tesla sells cars, but what Elon Musk really sells is the story of a sustainable future. In politics, candidates win not by citing policy documents, but by telling stories that connect emotionally. They share anecdotes of ordinary citizens, highlight struggles, and frame themselves as part of a larger narrative of progress. Facts matter, but stories move people to vote. Even in personal relationships, storytelling makes you magnetic. Imagine you meet someone new at a gathering. You could say, "I work in marketing," flat, forgettable. Or you could say, "I used to dread Mondays until I discovered that persuading people wasn't about trickery, it was about empathy. That realization changed my career." Which one leaves a mark? The story, always. But here's the deeper truth. Storytelling is not just a performance, it's a philosophy. It's about seeing life itself as a narrative. Influential people don't just tell stories, they live them. They craft their lives intentionally. understanding that every choice becomes part of their legend. When you see your life as a story, you begin to live with vision, you stop drifting and start authoring. And remember, stories don't have to be grand epics. Sometimes the smallest moments carry the biggest impact. A child offering you a flower, a stranger's kindness on a hard day, a personal failure that taught humility. These small human stories, told with honesty, can influence more powerfully than the most polished speeches. So here is the key. If you want to master influence, don't memorize scripts. Collect stories. Notice them in your own life, in the lives of others, in history, in everyday encounters. Keep a journal of stories. Then practice weaving them into conversations naturally. With time, you'll find that people lean in when you speak, not because your words are complex, but because your stories are alive. Storytelling is not a talent you're born with. It is a skill you can develop. Chapter 6. The Art of Emotional Control. Influence is not only about how you speak or listen, it is also about how you carry yourself under pressure. In every interaction, people aren't just hearing your words, they're reading your emotions. Your tone, your body language, the rhythm of your voice, even the subtle tension in your face all broadcast how you're feeling. And here's the secret. People don't follow those who are emotionally volatile. They follow those who project calm power, even in chaos. Highly influential people understand this truth. The one who controls their emotions controls the room. Let's picture two scenarios. Imagine a leader who explodes at the slightest mistake. Every meeting is charged with fear because no one knows when the storm will come. People stop taking risks, stop speaking freely, and start avoiding responsibility. This leader might command authority for a while, but they lose trust, and influence slips through their fingers. Now imagine another leader, one who faces the same mistakes and crises but responds with composure. When challenges arise, their voice steadies instead of shaking. When others panic, they remain focused. When attacked, they don't lash out. They pause, think, and respond with precision. In that calmness, people find strength. They lean on it. They respect it. They are influenced by it. The difference between the two is not talent or intelligence. It is emotional control. But here's the challenge. Emotional control is not easy. We live in a world that constantly provokes reactions, insults, criticism, delays, frustrations, betrayals. The natural impulse is to respond quickly, emotionally, defensively. Yet the moment you lose control of your emotions, you hand over your power. Whoever provoked you now controls you. They've pushed your buttons, and you danced. That is the opposite of influence. Influential people refuse to be puppets of provocation. They master themselves first, so they can lead others. Let's break down the habits of emotional control that separate the influential from the average. 1. The pause before response. When someone says something insulting or frustrating, most people react instantly, but influential people pause. Even a few seconds of silence can change the trajectory of an interaction. In that pause they breathe. In that pause they remind themselves of their true goal. Is it to win an argument or to win influence? That pause is power. 2. Reframing the situation. Emotional control comes not from suppressing feelings, but from reframing perspectives. For example, instead of seeing criticism as an attack, see it as free feedback. Instead of seeing delays as disrespect, see them as an opportunity to practice patience. Influential people train their minds to interpret events in ways that keep them calm and constructive. 3. Mastery of body language. Your emotions leak through your body, whether you want them to or not. But the reverse is also true. Your body can influence your emotions by controlling posture, breathing, and movement. You can calm your mind. Stand tall, breathe slowly, and your nervous system begins to believe you are safe. even under fire. Influential people use their body as an anchor. 4. Emotional detachment from ego. Most emotional outbursts come from ego, the desperate need to defend pride, to prove superiority, to avoid looking weak. But truly powerful people don't fear looking weak, because they know real strength is in restraint. By detaching from ego, they become harder to provoke. They don't need to prove themselves with every insult. They let results speak. 5. Long-term vision. Emotional control is easier when you focus on the big picture. Ask yourself, will this matter in a year? In 5 years? Most things that trigger anger or anxiety today won't even be remembered next month. Influential people zoom out and refuse to give small moments the power to dictate their state. Now, let's see this in real life. Think of Nelson Mandela. He was imprisoned for 27 years, humiliated, mistreated, cut off from his family. Many would have emerged bitter, ready to unleash vengeance. Instead, Mandela emerged calm, measured and forgiving. That emotional control allowed him to unite a divided nation instead of igniting civil war. That is influence born from mastery of self. Or look at Warren Buffett. In the financial world, panic is common. Markets crash, stocks plummet, fortunes vanish. Most investors react emotionally, buying and selling in fear. Buffett, however, stays calm. He once said, "Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful." His fortune was built on emotional discipline when others lost their heads. Even in daily life, emotional control can transform influence. Imagine you're at work, and a colleague unfairly criticizes your effort in front of others. The easy response is defensiveness, sarcasm, maybe even anger. But the influential response is calm acknowledgement. "I hear your concern. Let's talk after this to make sure we're aligned." Instead of escalating conflict, you diffuse it. People watching see not weakness, but strength. Of course, emotional control doesn't mean suppressing feelings. It means managing them. Bottling up anger or sadness only builds pressure that will eventually explode. Instead, influential people process their emotions intentionally. They journal, they exercise, they meditate, they talk with trusted confidants. They release emotions in healthy ways so they don't poison interactions. Here's a practice you can use: the name it to tame it technique. Neuroscience shows that when you label an emotion, its intensity decreases. If you're anxious, say to yourself, "I'm feeling anxious." If you're angry, say, "I'm feeling angry." This simple act activates the rational brain and reduces the grip of emotion. Influential people use this self-awareness to stay in control. Another practice: visualize yourself as an observer. When emotions rise, imagine you are watching yourself from above, like a character in a story. This distance helps you detach, evaluate, and choose wisely instead of reacting blindly. Why does emotional control matter so much for influence? Because people mirror emotions. If you enter a room anxious, the room feels tense. If you enter calm, the room relaxes. Your emotional state sets the tone. Influential people know this and treat their emotions like a thermostat, controlling the temperature of interactions instead of being controlled by it. And here's the paradox: when you control your emotions, you gain the freedom to use them powerfully. A calm person who chooses to express anger strategically can shake people to attention. A measured leader who chooses the right moment to show vulnerability can inspire deep loyalty. But without control, those emotions are scattered, random and weak. With control, they are weapons of influence. So the next time you feel provoked, remember this: the strongest person in the room is not the loudest, not the most aggressive, not the most dramatic. The strongest person is the one who stays composed when others lose control. Influence begins with self-mastery, and self-mastery begins with emotional control. Chapter 7. The subtle art of persuasion. Influence without persuasion is incomplete. You may have presence, confidence, and control over your emotions, but if you cannot persuade, if you cannot guide people toward your vision, your ideas, or your goals, your influence is limited. Persuasion is the bridge between having power and using power. Now, persuasion is often misunderstood. People think persuasion is about manipulation, about tricking someone into doing what they don't want. That is not persuasion. That is deception. True persuasion aligns interests. It finds the overlap between what you want and what they want, and it builds a path where both parties feel they're walking forward together. That is why persuasion creates loyalty instead of resistance. Let's start with this truth. People are not persuaded by logic alone. Logic is important. Yes, it gives structure, it provides evidence, but it is rarely the deciding factor. The human brain does not operate like a calculator. Decisions are emotional first and rational second. People buy with emotion and justify with logic. They agree with their hearts and then defend with their minds. Think about a simple purchase. A car. People will research the mileage, the safety ratings, the price, but what usually tips the scale? It's the way the car makes them feel. Does it make them feel safe, powerful, stylish, free? That feeling drives the choice, and the numbers are used afterward to rationalize it. The same rule applies in persuasion. So, if you want to persuade, you must speak to emotions. Highly influential people do this instinctively. When Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his iconic speech, he didn't say, "I have a plan." He said, "I have a dream." Dreams ignite emotions. They move people beyond statistics into visions of what could be. Logic explained the injustice, but emotion carried the movement. Here are the foundational habits of persuasion practiced by the most influential people. 1. Establish trust before influence. Without trust, persuasion fails. People resist when they feel unsafe or manipulated. Influential individuals take time to build credibility, demonstrate integrity, and show consistency. When trust is established, resistance softens. Think about it. You're far more likely to take advice from someone you respect and trust than from someone you suspect has hidden motives. Lead with stories, not just facts. Facts inform. Stories transform. A fact says, "This medicine works for 90% of patients." A story says, "Let me tell you about John, who was struggling until he tried this, and now he's thriving." Stories bypass the analytical mind and go straight to the emotional core. They create relatability, and relatability creates persuasion. 3. Use the principle of reciprocity. When someone gives you something of value, you feel inclined to give back. Persuasion taps into this natural law. Influential people often give first, whether it's knowledge, support, opportunities, or kindness. They don't demand influence, they earn it. When the time comes to ask for cooperation, people are far more receptive. 4. Simplify the message. Complex arguments confuse. And when people are confused, they don't act. Influential persuaders take complicated ideas and distill them into clear, simple, memorable statements. Think of slogans that changed history. Yes, we can. Make America great again. These aren't complex essays. They are short, sharp, and sticky. 5. Anchor with social proof. People often look to others when making decisions. If everyone else is doing something, it must be valuable, right? That's the psychology of social proof. Persuasive people show that others, especially respected figures, already support their idea. This builds credibility and reduces perceived risk. 6. Paint the vision of consequences. Persuasion isn't only about highlighting benefits, it's also about showing the cost of inaction. Influential persuaders balance both sides. If you act, here's what you'll gain. If you don't, here's what you'll lose. The human brain is more motivated by avoiding loss than by seeking gain. Present both, and you double your impact. Now let's ground this in examples. Consider Steve Jobs. He didn't just persuade people to buy Apple products. He persuaded them to believe they were part of a movement. He didn't sell a phone. He sold a lifestyle of creativity and individuality. His keynotes weren't technical breakdowns. They were theatrical stories that made people feel part of the future. That's persuasion at its highest level. Or look at Oprah Winfrey. Her power has never been in forcing people. It has been in persuading them with authenticity. When Oprah recommends a book, it sells millions. Why? Because people trust her. They feel she genuinely cares, and her recommendations resonate emotionally. Here's the secret. The most persuasive people don't push. They pull. They don't pressure. They attract. They make others want to move in their direction because it feels right. It feels good. And it feels beneficial. But persuasion also requires responsibility. Influence without ethics is dangerous. History has shown us leaders who persuaded millions toward destruction. That is why true mastery involves persuasion aligned with values. Your words should not just serve your ego, they should serve a greater good. When persuasion uplifts others as it uplifts you, it builds empires of loyalty. How can you practice persuasion in your daily life? Start with small things. The next time you want someone to join your idea, don't bombard them with facts. Tell them a story. Paint them a vision. Show them the benefit, and connect it to something they already care about. Build trust, then guide gently. Notice how people respond differently, not with resistance, but with openness. One technique you can use is future pacing. Instead of saying, "This will help," say, "Imagine how your life will look in 6 months after you've tried this." By guiding the mind into the future, you let people experience the benefit emotionally before they've even acted. Another tool, the power of questions. Instead of telling someone what to do, ask questions that lead them to their own conclusion. For example, instead of saying, "You should start exercising," ask, "How would you feel if you had more energy every day?" Questions bypass resistance and let people persuade themselves. Ultimately, persuasion is not about domination, it is about alignment. It's not about winning against others, it's about winning with others. The most influential people in history, leaders, entrepreneurs, activists, did not move the world by forcing, they moved it by persuading, by making others believe in something bigger, something meaningful, something worth following. Remember this: the measure of persuasion is not in the words you say, but in the emotions you stir. Facts inform minds, but emotions move hearts. And when you move hearts, people move with you. So the next time you want to influence, ask yourself, am I pushing, or am I pulling? Am I pressuring, or am I attracting? Am I forcing compliance, or am I inspiring commitment? Because persuasion at its highest level is not about creating followers, it is about creating believers. Chapter 8. Emotional Intelligence. The Silent Superpower. If charisma is the flame that attracts people, then emotional intelligence is the fuel that keeps the fire alive. Influence without emotional intelligence is short-lived. You might capture attention with words, looks, or power, but without the ability to connect deeply on an emotional level, that attention fades. People may admire you from afar, but they will not trust you, and without trust, your influence cannot last. What exactly is emotional intelligence? It is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions, and to do the same with others. It's not about suppressing emotion or becoming robotic. It's about mastering it. It's the awareness that your emotions affect your decisions, your relationships, and the energy you project into the world. Think about this. People do not remember everything you say, but they always remember how you made them feel. This is why emotional intelligence is the silent superpower of highly influential individuals. They can walk into a room, sense the unspoken energy, and adjust their tone, body language, and words to fit the emotional climate. They can calm anger, inspire hope, or ignite enthusiasm, not because they force emotions, but because they respect and channel them. Let's break it down into 4 core pillars. 1. Self-awareness. Self-awareness. Self-awareness is the foundation. If you don't understand your own emotions, you can't expect to manage them. High performers are attuned to their triggers. They know what frustrates them, what motivates them, what excites them. This awareness allows them to pause before reacting. Instead of being controlled by emotions, they choose how to respond. Imagine 2 leaders facing a crisis. The first panics, raises their voice, and spreads anxiety to the team. The second feels the same fear but recognizes it, breathes through it, and speaks calmly. Which leader do people follow? The second one. Self-awareness is what creates that gap between stimulus and response, the gap where leadership is born. 2. Self-regulation. Awareness without regulation is dangerous. If you know you're angry but can't control it, you will still damage relationships. Self-regulation is the art of managing emotions so they serve you instead of sabotage you. Influential people don't suppress emotions, they channel them. Anger becomes determination, fear becomes preparation, excitement becomes inspiration. When Nelson Mandela was released from prison after 27 years, he had every reason to be consumed by anger. Instead, he chose forgiveness. That act of self-regulation transformed him from a victim into a global leader. Emotional mastery elevated his influence beyond politics into legacy. 3. Empathy. This is where true influence takes root. Empathy is the ability to step into another person's shoes and see the world from their perspective. It's not just about feeling sorry for them, it's about truly understanding their emotions and experiences. Empathy gives you leverage because it shows people you get them. When people feel understood, their defenses lower, they open up, they listen. Think about it. How often do you resist advice from someone who doesn't understand your struggles? But when someone says, "I know exactly how you feel, I've been there," your walls crumble. That's empathy at work. 4. Social skills. Finally, emotional intelligence extends outward through social skills, the ability to build and maintain meaningful connections. Influential individuals are skilled at reading group dynamics, mediating conflicts, and creating environments where people thrive. They know when to speak, and when to listen, when to challenge and when to encourage. Their influence grows because people not only respect them but also enjoy being around them. Now, let's take this deeper. Emotional intelligence is not just about being nice, it is about being effective. Sometimes empathy means listening with compassion. Sometimes it means delivering tough feedback in a way that inspires growth instead of defensiveness. The emotionally intelligent leader knows which approach to take. Take a moment to consider the people in your own life. Who are the ones you trust most? Who are the ones you feel safe around? Chances are, they are people with high emotional intelligence. They don't dismiss your feelings. They don't make everything about themselves. They know when to be silent, when to encourage, when to challenge, and when to simply sit with you in your struggles. This is why emotional intelligence is often more valuable than raw intellect. Studies have shown that in the workplace, emotional intelligence predicts success more reliably than IQ. Why? Because business is not just about numbers, it's about people. And the person who can lead, inspire, and manage people will always outperform the one who cannot, regardless of technical skill. For those who aspire to social mastery, here are habits to cultivate emotional intelligence. Practice mindfulness. Spend a few minutes each day observing your emotions without judgment. Notice how your body reacts when you're stressed, excited, or frustrated. Awareness is the first step to mastery. Respond, don't react. The next time you feel triggered, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, what response would serve me best right now? That pause is the difference between regret and respect. Listen actively. When someone is speaking, don't just wait for your turn to talk. Really listen. Ask clarifying questions. Reflect back what you hear. People will feel valued, and your influence will grow. Validate emotions. You don't have to agree with someone's perspective to acknowledge their feelings. Saying, I understand that this situation is frustrating for you, builds connection. Develop empathy muscles. Put yourself in situations that expand your perspective. Read diverse stories, engage with people outside your usual circles, and practice imagining how you'd feel in their position. Let me share a story. A CEO once entered a meeting where the team was visibly anxious about upcoming layoffs. Instead of launching into numbers and cost-cutting strategies, he paused. He looked around and said, I can see the fear in this room. I know you're worried about your families, your future, your stability. I want you to know I don't take this lightly. Only after acknowledging the emotions did he present his plan. That moment didn't erase the difficulty, but it built trust. People followed him not just because of his position, but because of his empathy. Here's the paradox. Emotional intelligence is silent. You won't always see it at work, but you'll always feel its impact. It's in the calm leader who steadies the storm. It's in the friend who listens without judgment. It's in the mentor who challenges you, not to break you, but to build you. Influence that lasts is built on emotional connection. Chapter 9. The Art of Persuasion. Turning words into influence. If emotional intelligence is the silent superpower, persuasion is the sharpened sword. It is the skill that transforms connection into action, turning understanding into results. Persuasion is not manipulation. Manipulation seeks to deceive or exploit. Persuasion, when done right, is about aligning your ideas with someone's values, inspiring them to act in a way that benefits both them and you. The most influential people in history were masters of this art. They could move crowds, change minds, and shape destinies, not through force but through words and presence. Think of Martin Luther King Jr. His speeches didn't just inform, they ignited. Or consider Steve Jobs, whose product launches felt less like marketing and more like a vision of the future that everyone wanted to be part of. Their influence came not from authority alone, but from persuasion, an ability to move hearts and minds. So what makes persuasion work? At its core, it rests on three timeless principles, first articulated by Aristotle: ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos is credibility, the trust people place in you. Pathos is emotion, the ability to stir feelings. Logos is logic, the reasoning that supports your case. When these three are balanced, persuasion becomes unstoppable. Let's break them down. Ethos: build trust before you speak. People listen to those they trust. You could have the most logical argument in the world, but if people doubt your integrity or expertise, your words fall flat. This is why the most influential people establish credibility before making demands. They show their track record. They display competence. They demonstrate character. Trust doesn't mean perfection. It means consistency. When people see that you practice what you preach, when they know your words align with your actions, they naturally give you their attention. Influence collapses the moment trust is broken, which is why credibility is not optional. It is the foundation of persuasion. Pathos: speak to the heart. We are emotional beings. Even the most analytical person makes decisions based on how something makes them feel, then justifies it with logic afterward. This is why advertisers use storytelling, images, and music to tap into emotion. But pathos isn't just about making people cry or cheer. It's about understanding the emotional drivers behind human behavior. Do people want security, belonging, recognition, freedom? Persuasion works when you connect your message to these underlying desires. A leader who says, "We need to work late to hit this deadline," might get compliance. But a leader who says, "If we succeed here, we prove we're capable of achieving something remarkable together," gets commitment. Same request, different framing, entirely different impact. Logos anchor with logic. Emotion alone is not enough. Once people feel moved, they need reasons to justify their decision. That's where logic comes in. Present facts, statistics, examples, and a clear structure. Logic is the backbone that keeps persuasion from collapsing into empty hype. It reassures people that their emotions are supported by reason. For example, if you're pitching a new business idea, emotion will make investors lean forward. But it's the numbers, market size, projections, proof of demand that close the deal. Logos doesn't inspire action by itself, but it ensures that action is sustained. Now, persuasion isn't just about speeches or sales pitches. It is about everyday interactions. A parent persuading their child to study. A teacher inspiring students to care about history. A friend convincing another to adopt healthier habits. In every case, persuasion relies on the delicate dance of trust, emotion, and logic. But beyond Aristotle's principles, there are practical habits that make someone truly persuasive. 1. The power of storytelling. Facts tell, stories sell. Humans are wired for stories. For thousands of years before books, before writing, stories carried wisdom. A story creates images in the mind, engages emotion, and makes your point memorable. Consider the difference persistence is important versus Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb, and when asked about his failures, he said, "I didn't fail 1,000 times, I found 1,000 ways that didn't work." One is advice, the other is persuasion. 2. Framing the message. How you say something is often more important than what you say. Influential people frame ideas in ways that highlight benefits instead of costs, opportunities instead of obstacles. If you tell someone, "This diet requires giving up your favorite foods," resistance rises. If instead you say, "This plan gives you more energy, better sleep, and long-term health," the same idea feels empowering. The facts don't change, the frame does. 3. Reciprocity. People are wired to return favors. When you give freely, advice, help, recognition, people feel compelled to give back. Persuasion often begins not with asking, but with offering. The best persuaders create goodwill long before they make requests. 4. Scarcity. We value what is rare. This is why limited offers, exclusive invitations, and deadlines are persuasive. But scarcity must be authentic. Artificial pressure feels manipulative and destroys trust. Done honestly, though, it adds urgency and motivates action. 5. Social proof. We look to others to decide what to do. If everyone is lining up at one restaurant, we assume it must be good. Influential people use this principle to strengthen their message. They show testimonials, highlight success stories, and point out how others are already on board. 6. Consistency and commitment. Once people publicly commit to something, they're more likely to follow through. This is why small yeses lead to bigger ones. Influential persuaders start by asking for small commitments, building momentum toward larger actions. Let me illustrate with a story. During World War II, the US government wanted households to eat more organ meats, like liver and kidneys, to conserve resources. Direct campaigns failed. People resisted. Then psychologists tried a new approach. They asked housewives to publicly commit, in front of their peers, to serving organ meats once a week. Suddenly, participation skyrocketed. Why? Because once people said yes, they felt compelled to stay consistent. That's persuasion in action. Now here's the secret. Persuasion is not about dominating others, it's about aligning interests. True persuasion feels like a win for both sides. It is cooperative, not coercive. When people walk away from you feeling not pressured, but empowered, they are far more likely to return trust and support you again. Persuasion also requires timing. You can say the right thing in the wrong moment and fail. Influential people read the room, sense the readiness of others, and wait until the emotional climate is right. They don't force, they invite. And remember, persuasion is not about speaking more, but speaking with intention. Some of the most persuasive moments happen in silence, a pause that builds tension, a look that communicates empathy, or a question that invites reflection. The best persuaders don't push their ideas, they lead people to discover those ideas themselves. By mastering persuasion, you elevate your influence from passive presence to active leadership. You stop hoping people will understand you and start ensuring they do. You stop wishing for agreement and start creating it. Imagine what changes when you fully embody this skill. Your pitches land, your negotiations close, your relationships deepen, your vision spreads. That is the power of persuasion. It transforms words into influence, influence into action, and action into lasting impact. Chapter 10. The Legacy of Influence. Living Beyond Yourself. Every journey has a destination, but in the realm of influence, the true destination is not fame, not wealth, not even power. The true destination is legacy. Influence, at its highest form, is not about how many people know your name. It is about how many lives you have touched, how many hearts you have changed, and how many futures you have reshaped for the better. Think about the names that live on in history. Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela. None of them were flawless. None were without critics. Yet their influence transcended their lifetimes because it was not rooted in ego. It was rooted in service. They sought not just to win arguments or gather followers, but to lift humanity. That is why their voices echo decades after they are gone. The question we must ask ourselves is simple. What will my influence leave behind? You have spent this journey uncovering the hidden habits of highly influential people: confidence, emotional intelligence, charisma, persuasion, empathy, and connection. But the final habit is perhaps the most powerful of them all: the habit of impact. The habit of impact. Impact begins with intention. Most people drift through life reacting to circumstances, influencing others by accident. But highly influential people choose deliberately. They ask, what do I want my presence to create in others? Do you want people to feel smaller around you, or greater? Do you want them to leave drained, or energized? Do you want them to remember your achievements, or your encouragement? Influential people are conscious architects of their presence. They know that every interaction, every handshake, every conversation, every smile plants a seed, and seeds, once planted, grow in ways we often cannot see. Legacy is not built in one grand act. It is built in consistent intentional habits of impact, repeated over time. The ripple effect. Picture a single stone dropped into a still pond. The ripples extend far beyond the point of contact, reaching places the stone itself will never touch. Influence works the same way. You may never know how your words today shape someone's tomorrow. The student you encouraged could become a leader. The colleague you mentored could go on to inspire thousands. The stranger you treated with kindness could carry that kindness into their family, their community, their future. Highly influential people understand this ripple effect. They do not underestimate the small gestures. They do not dismiss the everyday moments. They know that influence multiplies silently, invisibly, powerfully. From success to significance, there is a crucial difference between success and significance. Success is personal. It is about what you achieve for yourself. Significance is social. It is about what you contribute to others. Many chase success, only to feel empty when they arrive. The influential few go further. They ask, how can my success become significance? How can my wins lift others? How can my story give hope? My platform give voice? My resources give opportunity? The world is filled with successful people who are quickly forgotten. It is moved forward by significant people who live on in memory. Practical ways to build your legacy of influence. Mentor someone. True influence is not about keeping knowledge but passing it on. Share what you've learned. Invest in someone who reminds you of your younger self. Model the behavior you want multiplied. People don't just hear what you say, they imitate what you do. If you want kindness, show kindness. If you want resilience, embody resilience. Choose contribution over recognition. Do the work even when no one is watching. Some of the greatest acts of influence happen in private, unseen by the crowd, but felt deeply by the individual. Create something that outlives you. Write, record, build, teach, invent. Leave behind something tangible that others can draw strength from long after you're gone. Anchor your influence in values. Trends fade, titles vanish, wealth can disappear, but values endure. If your influence is anchored in truth, service and integrity, it will withstand time. The inner circle principle here is a final truth about legacy. The people closest to you are the truest measure of your influence. Too many chase admiration from strangers, while neglecting those at home. Influence begins with those who see you daily, the ones who know your flaws, who witness your unpolished moments. If you can inspire respect, love and growth in them, then your influence is genuine. A leader is not great because millions follow them. A leader is great because the people who know them best still trust them most. The story you leave behind. Someday, people will tell stories about you, around dinner tables, at family gatherings, perhaps even from podiums or in books. What will those stories say? Will they speak of your ambition, or your generosity, your victories, or your values? Will people say you made them feel inferior, or that you made them feel seen? The story you leave behind is being written now, in every choice, every word, every action. Influence is not something you build at the end of your life. It is something you craft daily, moment by moment, habit by habit. The circle closes. And so we return to where this journey began. Influence is not reserved for the famous. It is not the privilege of the wealthy. It is not the gift of the chosen few. Influence is human. It is woven into every interaction, every connection, every relationship. The secret habits of highly influential people are not secrets at all. They are choices available to anyone willing to cultivate them. Confidence, emotional intelligence, charisma, connection, persuasion, empathy, and ultimately, the commitment to impact. The circle closes with this truth. You are already influencing others, whether you realize it or not. The question is not if you will influence, but how. Will your influence be accidental or intentional? Will it be shallow or deep? Will it fade quickly or echo for generations? As you finish this book, don't let the words remain theory. Turn them into habits. Pick one area: confidence, listening, empathy, persuasion, and practice it deliberately this week. Watch the ripples begin to form, then build another habit, and another, until influence is no longer something you strive for but something you embody. Remember this: influence is the ability to change hearts, legacy is the ability to change futures, and mastery is living in such a way that both happen naturally. The world does not just need more voices, it needs more influential voices. Voices that heal, not divide. Voices that build, not break. Voices that inspire, not intimidate. Let yours be one of them.